June 13th, 1944, just after dawn, near the village of Villers-Bocage, Normandy, France. The air smells of crushed leaves, wet earth, and burned cordite. Morning fog hangs low over the hedgerows, clinging to the narrow lanes like smoke that hasn't yet decided to lift. Inside a Panzer I4 Ausf, Oberfeldwebel Karl-Heinz Müller presses his forehead against the cool steel rim of the commander's cupola and peers through his binoculars. Somewhere ahead, barely visible through the gaps in the bocage, American tanks are moving. Shermans? His gunner mutters, voice flat, almost bored. Müller exhales through his nose. Shermans. The word has already lost any sense of danger. For weeks now, German crews across Normandy have been encountering them, boxy, tall silhouettes with thin armor and a high profile that makes them easy to spot and easier to hit. Back in the training grounds near Paderborn, instructors had laughed as they described the American tank, a Tommy cooker. Lights up like a matchbox. One hit, and the crew bails out screaming. Müller had believed it. Everyone did. He lowers the binoculars and taps the turret wall twice with his knuckles, a signal drilled into muscle memory. The Panzer IV lurches forward slightly, engine growling low. The 75mm K40 is already loaded with armor-piercing rounds. His gunner, Gefreiter Lucas Brandt, adjusts the sight, calm and methodical. Range? Brandt asks. 400 meters. Laid vehicle, Müller replies. The first Sherman emerges fully from behind the hedgerow, olive-drab paint smeared with dust and chalk. A white star is visible on the hull. It's moving cautiously, turret traversing left to right, unaware it's already in a German gun sight. Fire. The recoil slams through the tank. A sharp crack echoes across the fields. The shell punches straight through the Sherman's frontal armor. For half a second, nothing happens. Then flames burst from the turret ring. The American tank grinds to a halt, smoke pouring upward in a thick, black column. Brandt doesn't cheer. He doesn't need to. This is exactly how it's supposed to go. Target destroyed, he says, already adjusting for the next shot. Another Sherman appears. Then another. Müller frowns. The second American tank takes a hit in the side. It explodes more violently, the ammunition cooking off with a thunderous roar. The crew never gets out. The third Sherman backs away, tracks churning mud, turret swinging wildly as if searching for a threat it can't see. Cowards, the loader scoffs. Müller almost smiles. Almost. Then, through the smoke, another Sherman appears. And another. And another. They're not charging recklessly. They're advancing in bounds. One moves, another covers. Infantry shadows them now, American riflemen slipping through the hedgerows with practiced coordination. A Sherman takes a hit and burns. Another replaces it within minutes, rolling forward from the same gap, gun already trained. Müller's radio crackles. Panzer Lehr Division units are reporting contacts everywhere. Not breakthroughs, pressure. Constant grinding pressure. Sir? Brandt says, his voice tighter now. They just keep coming. Müller scans the field again. He counts. 5 destroyed Shermans. 6. The ground is littered with wrecks, twisted hulls still burning from earlier in the morning. And yet the line of American tanks hasn't thinned. Back in Germany, replacing a Panzer IV takes weeks, months sometimes. Rail yards bombed, factories hit, skilled workers drafted or dead. Every tank lost here is a wound that doesn't heal. But the Shermans, they arrive like rain. Another radio call comes in, this time more urgent. A Panther platoon to the south is pulling back, low on fuel. Tigers are being held in reserve, their engines too valuable to risk on every skirmish. Orders are confused, fragmented. Müller feels something unfamiliar creep in beneath his confidence. Not fear, calculation. The Sherman isn't a better tank. He knows that. One-on-one, the German guns still dominate. The armor still holds. The training is still superior. But this isn't a duel. This is a flood. Another shot. Another Sherman disabled. Smoke, fire, screaming metal. And still in the distance, engines rumble. Müller realizes, slowly, uncomfortably, that the Americans are fighting a different kind of war. They're not trying to win every engagement. They're trying to exhaust the battlefield itself. The hedgerows echo with gunfire as the morning wears on. The Panzer IV's ammunition rack is half empty now. Fuel gauges dip lower. The radio keeps crackling with reports of losses. German losses that won't be replaced anytime soon. Müller grips the edge of the cupola, eyes fixed on the horizon. For the first time since arriving in Normandy, he stops mocking the Sherman. Because it's not the tank that's dangerous, it's the endless wave behind it. By midday, the fog is burned away, replaced by a pale Norman sun that glints off wrecked steel scattered across the fields. Smoke columns rise like black fingers pointing accusingly at the sky. Oberfeldwebel Karl-Heinz Müller's Panzer IV idles beneath the cover of an apple orchard. Engine ticking hot, the smell of burned oil seeping into the fighting compartment. They've fallen back 200 meters, not routed, withdrawn. A tactical reposition, the radio officer insists. But Miller knows what retreat feels like, even when dressed up in professional language. The loader wipes sweat from his brow, leaving a black smear across his face. "We're down to 8 armor-piercing rounds," he says. 8. Miller nods but doesn't answer. His eyes stay fixed on the hedgerow they abandoned minutes earlier. American artillery has begun to walk shells across it now, methodical and precise. Not the wild barrages of earlier years. This is measured fire, guided, adjusted. Someone is watching. Someone has time. He thinks back to Poland, to France in 1940, to the clean, sharp victories where speed and surprise broke enemies before they could react. Then, German tanks had been the wave. Now, they are the rocks trying to hold back the sea. The radio crackles again. This time it's Hauptmann Weiss Battalion Command. "All units report status." Miller takes the handset. 1 Panzer IV operational. Minor track damage, low ammunition. Enemy armor continues to advance with infantry support. A pause. Static hums. "Understood," Weiss replies. "Hold as long as possible. Reinforcements unavailable." Unavailable. The word lands harder than any shell. Across the orchard, another German tank crew crouches beside their disabled Panzer, smoking cigarettes with shaking hands. Their tank threw a track earlier. No recovery vehicle available. It will be abandoned by nightfall. Another loss that won't be replaced. Through binoculars, Miller watches the Americans reorganize. Shermans pull back behind cover while fresh ones roll forward. Infantry spreads out, probing for weak points. Engineers follow, cutting gaps through hedgerows with explosives. Everything moves with an unsettling rhythm. He recognizes it now, not improvisation, but doctrine. This isn't desperation. This is logistics made visible. Back in the Reich, the propaganda reels showed German factories still producing tanks, still defiant. But Miller knows the truth. He's seen the bombed-out rail lines, heard the whispers about shortages, rubber, fuel, steel. A Panther might be superior on paper, but it's useless without spare parts, without fuel trucks that never arrive. The Americans don't seem to have that problem. Another Sherman takes position at the edge of the field. It doesn't rush forward. It simply sits, turret steady, daring the Germans to reveal themselves. A second Sherman flanks left. A third moves right. Infantry fans out, rifles raised. Miller feels the pressure tighten, not from speed, but from certainty. The Americans know time is on their side. "Gun ready," Brandt says quietly. Miller hesitates. Firing now would reveal their position again. And for what? 1 more burning Sherman? He weighs the equation in his head. 1 German tank equals 1 kill, but 1 American tank equals a delay measured in minutes. He lowers his binoculars. "Hold fire." Brandt glances up, surprised, but nods. Minutes pass, then more. American artillery shifts further inland, bypassing the orchard entirely. Infantry advances through a neighboring field instead. The Shermans don't chase, they wait. Miller realizes the Americans aren't trying to crush every German position head-on. They're pinning them, fixing them in place while other units flow around the resistance like water around stone. A runner arrives from battalion headquarters, breathless. "Orders," he says. "We fall back to secondary line by 1600 hours." So that's it. Another line, another delay. As the Panzer IV reverses carefully out of the orchard, Miller watches the battlefield recede. Burned Shermans litter the fields behind them, proof of German tactical success. But the Americans don't stop to recover the wrecks. They drive past them. That night, under camouflage netting, Miller listens to distant engines humming steadily through the darkness. Not German engines. Those are sporadic now, cautious, conserved. These are American, hundreds of them, moving forward, even at night. He thinks of something his old instructor once said. A tank is only as strong as the factory behind it. Back then, the factory had been Germany. Now, lying awake beneath the Norman stars, Miller understands that the real enemy isn't the Sherman's thin armor or its mediocre gun. It's the fact that somewhere across the ocean, another one is already being built. And another. And another. July 18th, 1944. East of Caen, Normandy. Operation Goodwood. The ground begins to tremble before the first explosion is heard. Inside his Panzer IV, Oberfeldwebel Karl-Heinz Miller wakes as dust trickles from the turret seams and patters onto the steel floor. For a split second, he thinks it's another artillery barrage. Routine, survivable. Then the roar deepens, multiplies, becomes something else entirely. A thunder without rhythm. High above the cloud cover, hundreds of Allied bombers release their payloads. The first wave hits like the end of the world. The earth bucks violently, lifting the tank on its suspension before slamming it back down. Shock waves roll through the hull, rattling teeth and bones. The air inside the turret tastes of metal and fear. "Hold on!" Miller shouts, gripping the cupola rim, as another explosion detonates close enough to blur his vision. For nearly an hour, the bombing does not stop. German positions, trenches, gun pits, command posts are erased in seconds. Landmarks vanish, roads collapse. Entire villages are reduced to smoldering outlines. Radios scream with overlapping voices, then fall silent one by one. When the last bomb finally falls, the silence feels unnatural, heavy, as if the land itself is holding its breath. Then the engines come. Miller pushes open the cupola hatch and climbs halfway out. Smoke blankets the horizon, but through it he sees movement. At first, just shapes, shadows rolling forward through the haze, then clarity, Shermans, not a handful, not platoons, lines. Dozens of American tanks advance abreast across the open ground, their olive-drab hulls emerging from the smoke like a steel tide. Behind them, more follow, and more still, stretching beyond what Miller can see. Brandt stares through the gun sight, his voice barely audible. There are too many. Miller doesn't answer. He's counting and losing count. Orders crackle through the radio. Hold the line, engage at will, delay the advance. The words feel disconnected from reality. Still, training takes over. Target, lead tank, fire. The Panzer IV recoils violently. The shell slams into the nearest Sherman, punching through its armor. Flames erupt from the turret. The tank grinds to a halt, burning fiercely. A clean kill. Another shot. Another Sherman disabled. Then another. German guns all along the line open up, turning the front ranks into a wrecked barrier of twisted metal and fire. For a brief moment, it looks like the advance might stall. It doesn't. The Shermans simply drive around the burning hulks. Fresh tanks roll forward without hesitation, maintaining speed, maintaining formation. Some are hit and keep moving, armor scarred but functional. Others explode and are immediately replaced by vehicles from the rear. Miller feels a cold realization settle in his chest. They aren't advancing to survive. They're advancing to overwhelm. He fires until the gun barrel is scorching hot. The loader's arms tremble as he slams round after round into the breach. Ammunition racks empty fast, too fast. To the left, a Tiger tank engages, its 88mm gun obliterating Shermans at long range. Each hit is devastating, each kill absolute. And yet, even the Tiger is just one machine. Typhoon fighter bombers scream overhead, diving low. Rockets streak downward. A Panther erupts in a fireball, turret blown clear. Another is crippled, crew bailing out as flames engulf the engine deck. The sky belongs to the Allies now. German armor can't move without being seen, can't fire without being targeted. By afternoon, the line no longer exists as a line. It fragments. Units pull back independently. Tanks retreat one by one, conserving fuel, hugging tree lines, praying for cloud cover. The advance east of Caen slows, not because the Germans stop it, but because the Allies choose when to pause. As Muller withdraws, he looks back over the battlefield. The fields are littered with burning Shermans, dozens of them. Proof, undeniable proof, that German gunners still know how to kill. But beyond the smoke, more tanks are already rolling forward. That night, Miller sits on the hull of his Panzer IV, sharing a canteen with Brandt. Neither speaks at first. In the distance, American supply columns move steadily forward. Trucks, fuel tankers, recovery vehicles, endless and unbothered. Brandt finally breaks the silence. We destroyed more tanks today than ever before? Miller nods slowly. And tomorrow, they'll have more than they did this morning. Brandt swallows. Then what does that mean for us? Muller watches the horizon glow faintly from burning wrecks, German and American alike. It means, he says quietly, that firepower no longer decides this war. August 7th, 1944, near Mortagne, western France. Operation Lüttich. Rain taps softly against steel as Oberfeldwebel Karl-Heinz Müller's Panzer IV idles beneath a canopy of trees. The sound is almost peaceful, deceptively so. Mist clings to the hills, and the narrow Norman roads glisten with mud. Somewhere ahead, American lines stretch thin from weeks of rapid advance. This is supposed to be the moment everything turns around. The order comes over the radio in clipped, deliberate tones. German armor will strike west, cut through the American corridor at Avranches, and sever Patton's spearhead. The maps show arrows plunging deep into enemy territory. On paper, it looks bold, decisive. On the ground, Miller counts tanks, too few. Panthers move out first, their engines growling low as they roll onto the road. Muller follows, keeping distance, scanning every hedgerow and ridgeline. Fuel gauges hover uncomfortably close to empty. There will be no second attempt if this fails. At first, surprise is on their side. A column of Shermans appears ahead, 5 tanks, moving casually, unaware. Miller feels a familiar surge of confidence. This, at least, is something he understands. Target front, Brandt calls. Fire. The first Sherman erupts into flame. The second is hit moments later, its turret jerking violently before smoke pours out. The road fills with confusion. American crews scrambling, one tank reversing frantically, another slewing sideways into a ditch. German radios crackle with excitement. Reports of breakthroughs, of Americans pulling back. For a brief dangerous moment, it feels like the war might still obey the old rules. Then the clouds break. A distant roar builds rapidly overhead. Miller looks up just as dark shapes slice through the sky. "Chavos!" someone screams over the radio. Thunderbolt fighter bombers dive almost vertically, engines howling. Rockets streak downward, detonating along the road. A Panther ahead is struck squarely, its turret blown off in a violent flash of orange. Another is crippled, crew bailing out as flames engulf the engine deck. Miller slams the throttle and swerves off the road into a field, mud spraying over the hull. He can feel the aircraft circling, choosing targets at leisure. There is no Luftwaffe response. When the attack finally passes, the column is broken. Burning wrecks block the road. Smoke drifts low across the fields. The momentum is gone. They push forward anyway. By midday, the Americans have recovered. Sherman units reposition quickly, forming layered defenses. Infantry digs in with practiced speed. Artillery begins falling with frightening precision, shells walking methodically toward every German position. Miller knocks out another Sherman at close range, then another. Each kill feels smaller than the last. He watches an American crew escape from a burning tank, only to see a fresh Sherman roll into position behind them, gun already trained. The replacement is seamless, immediate. The pattern is undeniable now. The Americans are not trying to preserve their tanks. They are trading them for time, space, and certainty, because they can afford to. German losses mount quickly. Disabled Panthers are abandoned and destroyed by their own crews. Fuel runs out. Radios go silent. Recovery units never come. By evening, Operation Lüttich is over in everything but name. Miller's tank limps into a shallow defensive position. The crew is exhausted, faces hollow, uniforms soaked with sweat and rain. Brandt slumps against the turret wall, helmet resting in his lap. "They don't care how many we destroy," Brandt says quietly. Miller doesn't argue, because he understands now what that really means. The Americans care about winning the war, not winning each fight. That night, Miller writes in his field journal by the light of a shaded torch. "We still have better guns, better armor, better crews. It no longer matters. Because this war is no longer decided by superiority. It is decided by endurance." September 12th, 1944, near the German border. The morning air is cold now, sharp enough to sting the lungs. Summer is gone, and with it, any illusion that the front can still be stabilized. Oberfeldwebel Karl Heinz Müller stands half exposed in the cupola of his Panzer IV, watching the road ahead disappear into the gray distance. France is behind them. Germany lies ahead. The retreat has been relentless. Every river line held for a day. Every town defended until ammunition runs out. Then another withdrawal, another delay. The pattern repeats so often it blurs into routine. Miller's tank bears the scars of months of fighting. Patched armor, mismatched road wheels, an engine that coughs before settling into a rough idle. It is a veteran, like its crew, and like them, it is worn down, not by a single blow, but by accumulation. Ahead, American forces assemble methodically. Shermans line the road in long columns, their crews relaxed, some sitting on the hulls, helmets off. Trucks rumble past, carrying fuel, ammunition, spare parts. Recovery vehicles tow damaged tanks to the rear. Nothing looks rushed. Miller raises his binoculars and scans the horizon. He no longer feels anger when he sees the Shermans. No contempt, only recognition. They are not impressive machines. Their armor is still thin. Their guns still struggle against German heavy tanks. One-on-one, nothing has changed. Everything else has. When the engagement begins, it is brief. A handful of Shermans are knocked out. One German tank is disabled by artillery and abandoned. Fighter bombers appear overhead, forcing Müller to pull back again. Another delay, another kilometer yielded. As they fall back, Müller looks at the wrecks left behind, burned Shermans, smoking quietly by the roadside. In earlier years, such a sight would have meant victory, proof of dominance. Now he knows better. Within hours, those wrecks will be pushed aside. By morning, they will be gone. By evening, new tanks will occupy the same ground. That night, the crew eats in silence. No speeches, no slogans, just tired men conserving energy. Brandt cleans the gun carefully, even though they both know spare barrels are gone. Old habits die hard. Miller thinks back to the first time he saw a Sherman burn in Normandy. How easy it seemed. How confidently they laughed. They never understood what they were really facing. It wasn't a tank, it was a system. Factories untouched by enemy bombers. Rail lines stretching across a continent. Ports overflowing with equipment. Crews trained faster than they could be killed. Losses calculated, accepted, replaced. The Sherman was never meant to be unbeatable. It was meant to be endless. At dawn, the engines start again. The American advance resumes on schedule as if nothing could interrupt it, because nothing can. Miller climbs down into the turret and closes the hatch. The steel clang echoes briefly, then fades. Somewhere ahead, another line will be held. Another fight will be fought. Another handful of Shermans will burn, and it will change nothing. Because this war was decided long before Normandy, long before the first Sherman ever crossed a hedgerow. It was decided by who could keep coming.